Hello everyone, GigaBeef here, and today we're looking at the Superformance 12-gauge shotgun slug, which on paper at least is the most accurate slug in Tarkov. However, there are some strange practical issues with this round that are not obvious at first glance, which we'll be looking into, as well as comparing to the other rounds with good accuracy to decide which is the best. The Superformance Slug keeps cropping up with people telling me how good it is, and it's the round with the highest accuracy bonus in the entire game, as well as the second most damaging slug for 12-gauge shotguns overall. It's not the most popular round, as AP-20, flechette and buckshot are more widely used, but there are players who swear by it for long-range shotgun play due to its 220 damage and 170% accuracy bonus. One shot to the leg takes off nearly half of your opponent PMC's health pool, and with the accuracy you can in theory hit those shots over a significant distance. Of course, the penetration of 5 is very bad on this slug, but we're not using it for that anyway. You just have to make sure not to fire at thoraxes when engaging PMCs. With 220 damage, you would be forgiven in thinking that it kills in 2 hits to the leg, but this is not the case due to the damage drop-off that starts as soon as the slug leaves the barrel. Over 50 meters, this is 206 damage, so you're only dealing 412 total and need a bit extra to actually secure a kill. The accuracy bonus along with the damage is the main reason to use this slug, and naturally this only matters at longer ranges. The 2 shotguns that perform well in this area are the revolver shotgun and the long-barreled version of the 153, optionally with the Salvo 12 suppressor. Amazingly, the revolver is still the best even compared to the suppressed 153, but only by a fraction, and you can put real optics on the 153, so generally it's the better choice for long-range slug combat. So Superformance has this 170% accuracy bonus, and because MOA is one of those stats that updates when you add rounds to the weapon, we can see the effect on the 153 directly in the modding screen, although this doesn't work on the revolver. I tested this quickly and it seems that it still has the same effect, but the revolver doesn't work like a regular magazine, so perhaps this is why it doesn't show up in the stats specifically when we chamber the shells. The Superformance Slug changes the accuracy from 9.49 to 3.51 on the 153, which is an incredible difference, meaning that at 100 meters we can hit within a circle of about 10 centimeters across, remembering that in Tarkov MOA is measured as a radius. You can probably still hit a headshot with this at 200 meters, which is fairly impressive for a shotgun. So 3 hit kills on any player at decent ranges and usable accuracy is sounding, well, situational for sure, but potentially quite fun. But there is a problem. Accuracy is all well and good, but accuracy and precision are 2 different things. There's no point having pinpoint accuracy if all of your shots land 3 meters up. Unfortunately, this is precisely what happens with the Superformance round over any meaningful distance. This is because of zeroing. Yes, that old issue that rears its head once again. We've addressed this in more detail previously, but since the ballistics trajectories were made significantly flatter in 12.12, for the most part players don't need to worry about the zeroing mechanic as much as they did before, unless sniping over 100 meters with rounds that differ significantly from the default round of the weapon. However, there are still situations in which these issues show up, and shotguns are a particularly glaring example. See, the issue is that every shotgun in the 12-gauge category is zeroed for 7mm buckshot. This is unhelpful because firstly, you don't really need to zero for this shell in any situation in EFT, but also because of buckshot's ballistics, which make it very unsuitable for applying to slug shooting at range. Given the buckshot shell is made up of several tiny pellets designed for use at relatively close ranges, these whiz out at first but slow down very quickly. Even at 50 meters, the velocity of these pellets is 55% lower than when they came out of the barrel. Superformance and other slugs don't lose energy at nearly the same rate. The velocity drop over the same distance of 50 meters is 12.5% for Superformance specifically. So the problem that this causes is that the zeroing in-game applies the buckshot trajectory to the slugs because the weapons are locked into this default round. As you can imagine, this means that even if you are shooting over 100 meters, the zeroing is still off such that Superformance slugs overshoot at pretty much any range. This has a massive impact in this particular case because every longer range scope in the game starts off at 50 meters and you can't go any lower. As we saw, at 50 meters, buckshot has a tremendous amount of drop-off, requiring the weapon to be lifted quite significantly to account for this. Slugs don't need anywhere near as much of an angle, so using the angle required for buckshot that's set into the 50 meter zeroing preset makes slugs overshoot, even if you're firing at 200 meters and still using the 50 meter zero. It's that extreme. The question now is, are some of the other slugs better and more practical to use? We still need accuracy, otherwise it renders long-range shooting pointless anyway. We saw earlier what a dramatic difference the addition of high accuracy slugs had to the MOA of shotguns with the most accurate stats, so this is a good starting point. Superformance leads the table of course, but below this our main slug contenders are the Copper Sabo with 150% accuracy bonus and the FTX Custom with 135%. Below this we're starting to get a little bit low on the stat boost required to hit properly at range, and you may also notice that as we travel down the list, the damage is decreasing. We can use this handy calculator on Tarkov ballistics to show that up to 150 meters, the lead slug will still just about 3 hit to the legs, but after that it's not enough damage with the drop off. We need our slug to deal the overall health pool of a PMC divided by 3 per shot, i.e. 440 health divided by 3, which is at least 147 damage. If we step down to the Paleva 6Us, the starting damage of 150 doesn't allow us to do this anymore, even at 5 meters. Surprising, but there you go. Then, looping back around to what started this whole discussion in the first place, we need to pick a projectile that has a velocity slower than Superformance, which will coincidentally work for these ranges when using a 50 meter buckshot 0. Superformance itself has a starting velocity of 594 meters per second, which is very fast, and Copper, which is the next one down, has 442 meters per second instead, quite a bit slower. This is the first one that I tried, and its lower starting velocity has good performance on the 50 meter 0 because it's a better match for buckshot's initial velocity, and then at 100 meter ranges it also works well. Presumably the drop off for Copper at 100 meters roughly matches that of buckshot at 50, which is really what we're after. Further than this, however, the differences in the ballistic trajectories cause Copper to deviate quite wildly, hitting very low at 200 meters. This is because we're still using a 50 meter 0 on the optic, and because Copper is that much slower than Superformance, it ends up dropping down at longer ranges. Changing the zeroing itself to 100 meters on the gun doesn't help either and caused it to hit incredibly high instead. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground to get a sweet spot. That said, 200 meters is really a very long way with shotguns, and to be honest across Tarkov in general too, so Copper Slugs have my seal of approval for use up to 100 meters and maybe a little further, which is where 99% of the fights occur anyway. Unfortunately, these are banned from the Flea and require Jaeger 3, so let's look at the next one, the FTX Custom. These are a little faster than Superformance Slugs at 480 versus 442 meters per second and move up from 14 to 20 pen, which is actually getting into a semi-sensible territory versus the Copper, especially against scavs. With a buff to recoil and only needing Jaeger 2, this is another round that pops up from time to time that people actually use and seem to like. From my testing, this hits a bit high at both 50 and 100 meters. This is about the same deviation upwards on both rounds, so if you're aware of it, it's something that you can correct for yourself. However, interestingly, with its extra speed, it performed well at 200 meters from a precision perspective, but at this range you can see the accuracy start to come into play with the dispersion of the shots around the target point. Ultimately, FTX is broadly usable so long as you're aware of the slight lift at shorter ranges. The final slug of this type that I tried was the lead slug. This is handy because it's purchasable from level 1 traders right at the start. However, note that the speed of this one is lower than all of the others at 370 meters per second. What this does to the trajectory is to hit a little high at 50 meters, well suited for 100 and then low at longer ranges. I only tested around 150 meters for this one because, as we discussed before, you're no longer getting a 3-hit kill after that distance. Even at 150 meters you're looking at quite a drop, so I'd likely rank this as the lowest performer of the 3. Now, given I was doing this testing in the first place, I figured that we may as well look at AP20 and RIP slugs, simply because AP20 is so popular and my personal favourite. With RIP 2-shotting PMCs out to 75 meters, this could be interesting in its own right. They don't have the accuracy that we were looking for in our original search, but they do still both have plus 80%. At 510 meters per second, AP20 is also the second fastest behind Superformance, so as you can imagine, they hit high at every range, but it's not by that much, and because you're usually aiming for center of mass, it's honestly not that bad. The accuracy at longer ranges means that you really do have to go for thorax though, because the deviation is too wide to hit heads over 150, and because of the penetration drop off, you'll have to hit a few times to get a good pen chance, even through class 4 armor. On the total other end of the spectrum, RIP is slow with 410 meters per second and interestingly is purchasable on the Flea, as well as at Jaeger 4 for a box of 5 for 210 per round. You do have to search for the box itself though, it's not listed in the same category as the regular ammo, so it's not really obvious that he sells it at all. At 50 meters and 100 meters, this shoots a tiny bit high on the 50 and bang on with the 100, which was surprisingly good performance. Combined with the fact that you can two-shot literally any player in the game with leg shots out to 80 meters with accurate sights, this is kind of interesting and perhaps warrants further investigation. Overall, if you can account for the lift on Superformance, have Jaeger 4 to spend 202 rubles a shot or can craft them instead, and want to snipe with a shotgun, then it's still an option at range due to having the fastest projectile speed and the most damage other than rip. However, for most engagements around 100 meters or less, with the same philosophy of flesh damage and accuracy, the Copper Sabot slug will get the job done and gives you an easier time actually aiming, plus is also much cheaper at 87 rubles per shot at Jaeger 3. For a ranged flesh slug, this would be my choice. If you're trying to shoot at very long ranges, such as over 150 meters and want an accurate 0 about 200 with recoil reduction thrown in, if you can manage a slight lift in the shorter end, the FTX slugs are honestly not bad either at 75 rubles from Jaeger 2. With how niche these situations are, and the requirement to engage PMCs at close range more often, I probably will personally stick to the AP20 slugs for now, but as they are locked to higher level traders and the hideout, this gives us a few more options to use sensibly lower down in the progression. So after watching this, if you're still interested in more information as to how the zeroing system works in Tarkov, go and watch this video next. As usual, a big shout out to all my patrons, hit all the buttons if you enjoyed this one, and as always, have fun in your raids.